Once upon a time there lived a young man named Chukwudi. To the world, he was nothing more than a grease-stained mechanic, toiling away under the hoods of rusty cars at Obina's auto repairs. His hands were calloused, his clothes worn, and his face often smudged with oil. The townsfolk saw him as just another struggling soul, barely scraping by on the little he earned fixing engines. But Chukwudi harbored a secret that would have turned their jaws to the ground. He was no ordinary man. Beneath the humble exterior lay a billionaire, a man of immense wealth who had forsaken his lavish life in pursuit of something far more precious than gold, true love. Chukwudi had grown weary of the glittering world he'd once inhabited. Back in the city, women flocked to him, their smiles dazzling but hollow, their affections tied to the shimmer of his wealth. They loved his sprawling mansion, his tailored suits, and the gleam of his luxury cars, but none ever cared for the man beneath it all. Tired of the pretense, he'd made a bold choice. He abandoned his riches, traded his suits for threadbare overalls, and moved to this quiet town to live as a commoner. His mission was simple yet profound: to find a woman who would love him for his heart, not his bank account. Every day, Chukwudi worked tirelessly at the auto shop, his muscles aching from hours bent over engines. The sun beat down relentlessly and the pay was meager, just enough to buy a modest meal and keep a roof over his head in a tiny rented room. It was a stark contrast to the life he'd known, where money flowed like water and every desire was met with a snap of his fingers. Yet he embraced the struggle, for it was the price of his quest. Down the dusty street from the shop stood a small eatery, Mama Ngozi's Kitchen, a humble spot where locals gathered for affordable plates of jollof rice, pounded yam or beans. It wasn't much to look at: wooden benches, chipped plates, and a roof that sagged in the rain, but it was a lifeline for the working folk, including Chukwudi. Mama Ngozi, the stern matriarch who owned the place, ruled her kitchen with an iron fist. Her sharp tongue kept everyone in line, from the customers to her staff. She had a daughter, Adiz, who helped her serve the meals, and a niece, Nneka, who had lived with the family since she was a child. Nneka's story was one of sorrow. Her parents had died in a tragic accident when she was barely 5, leaving her orphaned and alone. Mama Ngozi's husband, Uncle Emeka, had taken her in, but kindness stopped at the doorstep. Mama Ngozi treated Nneka more like a servant than family, piling extra chores on her thin shoulders and barking orders while Adiz lounged. Still, Nneka bore it all with quiet grace. She had a gift for cooking, her hands weaving magic into every dish, and a heart that remained gentle despite the harshness around her. Chukwudi became a regular at Mama Ngozi's Kitchen, stopping by every afternoon for lunch. His order was always the same: a simple plate of rice or beans, no meat. Nneka noticed it from the first day. At first, she thought he might dislike meat, but as the days passed, she saw the weariness in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped after a long shift. She began to suspect the truth: he couldn't afford it. One quiet afternoon, as he sat in his usual corner, picking at a plain mound of rice, Nneka couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer. She approached him, balancing a tray on her hip, and smiled softly. "Excuse me, Chukwudi," she said, her voice warm but hesitant. He looked up, startled, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Yes." She paused, then tilted her head. "Why do you always order food without meat?" Chukwudi blinked, caught off guard. He glanced at his plate, then back at her, a faint flush creeping up his neck. After a moment he sighed. "I don't have money for meat," he admitted, his voice low, almost ashamed. Nneka's heart twisted. She'd seen struggle before, mirrored it in her own life, but hearing it from him struck a chord. He didn't complain, didn't beg, just accepted his lot with a quiet dignity that tugged at her. "You're a mechanic, right?" she asked, already knowing the answer. He nodded. "Yes. I just started working at Obina's. Things are hard." She swallowed, her mind racing. She knew what it was like to go without, to stretch every kobo until it screamed. That night, as she lay on her thin mat in the cramped room she called home, Chukwidi's tired face haunted her thoughts. She tossed and turned, unable to shake the image of him eating plain rice day after day. By morning she'd made up her mind: she had to do something. The next day, when Chukwudi came for lunch, Nneka prepared his usual order. But this time, as she scooped the rice onto the plate, she slipped a small piece of meat beneath it, hiding it from prying eyes. Her hands trembled slightly. She knew Mama Ngozi would skin her alive if she found out, but she couldn't stop herself. When she set the plate before him, she leaned close and whispered, "Don't tell anyone." Chukwudi froze, staring at the meat peeking out from the rice. He looked up at her, then back at the food, his throat tightening. "Nneka," he began, but she cut him off with a quick shake of her head. "Just eat," she said, offering a small, conspiratorial smile before hurrying back to the kitchen. He hesitated, guilt prickling at him. He didn't want her to risk trouble for his sake, but the kindness in her gesture overwhelmed him. Slowly he picked up the meat and took a bite. It was tender, flavorful, the best thing he'd tasted in months. As he ate, something warm bloomed in his chest, a feeling he hadn't known in years. For the first time since leaving his old life, Chukwudi felt seen, not as a billionaire or a mechanic but as a man. From that day on, it became their secret ritual. Each afternoon, Nneka would sneak a piece of meat onto his plate, and each time she'd whisper the same words, "Don't tell anyone." Chukwudi tried to refuse once, worried for her safety, but she just smiled and insisted, "Just eat." Slowly something shifted between them. He began to notice her more, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the gentle way she spoke to even the rudest customers, the strength in her despite the weight she carried. She was different, radiant in a way no woman he'd met before had ever been. One evening, as the eatery closed and the last customers trickled out, Chukwudi lingered outside. When Nneka stepped into the cool night air, wiping her hands on her apron, he cleared his throat. She turned, surprised to see him. "Chukwudi? What's wrong?" He took a step closer, his voice soft but steady. "I just wanted to say thank you. For everything." She laughed, a light sound that danced in the air. "It's just meat, Chukwudi." "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's not just meat. It's kindness." Their eyes locked, and for a moment the world fell away. Nneka broke the silence with a playful grin. "Well, you can pay me back when you become a big-time mechanic." He chuckled, but her words pierced deeper than she knew. As he walked back to his cramped room that night, a realization settled over him like a warm blanket. This woman who thought him penniless had given him more than she'd ever know. For the first time, Chukwudi felt the stirrings of love, not for what he could offer but for who he was. And in that moment he knew, Nneka was the one he'd been searching for all along. The days stretched into weeks, and the quiet bond between Chukwudi and Nneka grew stronger with every stolen glance and whispered word. Mama Ngozi's kitchen became more than just a place for Chukwudi to eat. It was where he found solace, where he could shed the weight of his disguise and simply be himself. Nneka's small acts of kindness had woven a thread between them, fragile yet unbreakable, and Chukwudi found himself counting the hours until he could see her again. But secrets, no matter how well-intentioned, have a way of unraveling, and their peaceful routine was about to be shattered. It began on a humid afternoon, the kind where the air clung to your skin and tempers flared like dry tinder. Chukwudi arrived at the eatery as usual, his shirt damp with sweat from a long day at Obina's auto repairs. Nneka was behind the counter, her apron streaked with sauce, her hands moving deftly as she prepared his plate. She caught his eye and offered a shy smile, one that made his chest ache with something he couldn't quite name. As she scooped rice onto the plate, she slipped a piece of meat beneath it, her movements quick and practiced. She set it before him with her usual whisper, "Don't tell anyone," and hurried back to the kitchen. Chukwudi ate slowly, savoring not just the food but the care behind it. He watched Nneka as she worked, her grace undimmed by the chaos around her. She was humming softly, a tune he didn't recognize, and he wondered what dreams she held in that resilient heart of hers. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice Adiz, Mama Ngozi's daughter, watching from the shadows. Adiz had always been sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, her jealousy of Nneka simmering just beneath her lazy demeanor. She'd never liked how customers warmed to her cousin, how Nneka's quiet strength outshone her own entitlement. And now she'd caught something worth telling. In the kitchen, Nneka was wiping down a counter when Adiz burst in, her arms crossed and a smirk twisting her lips. "Who's that food for?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the hum of the stove. Nneka froze, her rag still in hand. She turned slowly, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "It's for Chukwudi," she said, her tone even. "I just feel sorry for him. Please don't tell Mama." Adiz's eyes widened, then narrowed with glee. "Chukwudi? That filthy mechanic." She clapped her hands dramatically, her voice rising. "So you have a boyfriend now, eh? And not just any boyfriend, a poor, dirty one. Nneka, you finished yourself." Nneka's heart pounded. She dropped the rag and grabbed Adiz's arm, her voice low and urgent. "Adiz, please, he's not my boyfriend. He doesn't have money for meat and I just wanted to help. Don't tell Mama, I beg you." Adiz shook her off with a laugh, her eyes glinting with mischief. "You think I'll keep quiet? You're stealing my mother's meat for a man, and you expect me to say nothing?" Before Nneka could stop her, Adiz spun on her heel and dashed out of the kitchen, her voice piercing the air. "Mama. Mama, Come and see what Nneka is doing. Mama Ngozi stormed in like a thunderstorm, her face a mask of fury. The customers fell silent, sensing the brewing tempest. What is all this noise? She barked, her hands planted on her hips. Adiz pointed at Nneka, barely containing her excitement. Mama, look. Nneka has been stealing your meat to feed that mechanic, Chukwudi. She's even calling him by name like they're married. Nneka's hands trembled as Mama Ngozi's gaze snapped to her. Is this true? The woman demanded, her voice a low growl. Nneka opened her mouth to explain, but the words caught in her throat. Mama, I was just helping him. He has no money for meat and... A sharp slap cut her off, the sound echoing through the eatery. Nneka stumbled back, her cheeks stinging, her vision blurring with tears. Mama Ngozi didn't stop there. She grabbed the plate Nneka had prepared and hurled it to the ground, rice and meat scattering across the floor. You useless girl, she screamed. You're feeding a worthless mechanic while I'm the one keeping a roof over your head? Shut up and follow me. Nneka's legs shook, but she had no choice. Mama Ngozi marched out of the eatery, dragging her niece behind her like a disobedient child. The townsfolk whispered as they passed, their eyes following the spectacle. Chukwudi, who had been eating quietly, stood up, his heart sinking. He wanted to intervene, but he knew it would only make things worse. He watched helplessly as Mama Ngozi stormed toward Obina's auto repairs, her rage a living thing. When they reached the shop, the other mechanics paused, tools clattering as they turned to stare. Chukwudi was tightening a bolt on an old car when Mama Ngozi's voice boomed. Chukwudi? He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, his stomach knotting. Madam, what's wrong? Mama Ngozi flung the rag at his feet, her face twisted with disgust. You are what's wrong. Didn't I warn you to stay away from Nneka? But instead you're using her to steal from me. Chukwudi's jaw tightened. I never stole anything, he said calmly. And I never asked her to. Shut up. Mama Ngozi roared. You're a useless man looking for a woman to feed you. If I ever see you near my eatery again, if I ever hear you spoke to Nneka, I swear you'll rot in jail. Nneka's eyes glistened with tears as she met Chukwudi's gaze. The hurt in his expression mirrored her own, but she couldn't speak. Mama Ngozi yanked her away, leaving Chukwudi standing there, powerless. The other mechanics muttered among themselves, but he ignored them, his fists clenched at his sides. He'd never been insulted like this, not as a billionaire, not even as a mechanic, but he swallowed his pride for Nneka's sake. That evening, when Mama Ngozi returned home, she wasted no time recounting the day's events to her husband, Uncle Emeka. His face darkened with every word, his temper rising like a tide. When Nneka stepped into the house, still reeling from the humiliation, Uncle Emeka's voice thundered. Come here, Nneka. She approached slowly, tears already spilling down her cheeks. He unbuckled his belt, the leather creaking ominously. The first lash landed hard across her back, the pain searing through her thin dress. She bit her lip to stifle a cry as he struck again. You're too young to have a boyfriend, he shouted. And of all people, a poor mechanic? He's not my boyfriend, Nneka sobbed. I only helped him. Another lash silenced her. Shut up. Uncle Emeka bellowed. Her body trembled, the welts rising on her skin. Mama Ngozi watched from the corner, her arms crossed, her silence a cold approval. Then Uncle Emeka's voice dropped, icy and final. If I hear anything again, I'll marry you off to Chief Okonkwo. Nneka's blood ran cold. Chief Okonkwo was a wealthy man in his 60s, notorious for his cruelty. His last wife had fled after years of torment, and rumors swirled that he'd driven her to it. No, please, uncle, don't. Nneka begged, her voice breaking. I'll behave, I swear. He seized her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. If you don't, I'll take you to his house tomorrow. That night, Nneka lay on the cold floor of her room, her back throbbing, her spirit shattered. She curled into herself, tears soaking the mat beneath her. Mama, Papa, please save me, she whispered into the darkness, her voice a fragile thread. She had no one, no parents, no allies, just the fading hope that had kept her going all these years. A week passed, heavy with silence. Mama Ngozi kept Nneka under a hawk's watch, ensuring she stayed far from the mechanic shop. Chukwudi didn't dare return to the eatery, but his mind churned with worry for her. He missed her smile, her quiet strength, the way she made him feel human. Then one evening, fate intervened. Mama Ngozi and Adiz left to visit a relative, leaving Nneka alone. Seizing her chance, she slipped out and hurried to the back of the mechanic shop, where she knew Chukwudi often rested. He was there, sitting on a wooden bench, lost in thought. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Nneka," he said softly, standing. She smiled, relief washing over her. "Chukwudi, I've missed you." He took her hands, his touch gentle. "I thought I'd never see you again." "They've been watching me," she admitted. "I had to be careful." He sighed, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "I understand. But I'm glad you're here." They stood in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Then Chukwudi took a deep breath. "Nneka, I have something to tell you." She nodded, her eyes searching his. "What is it?" "I love you," he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "I've loved you since the moment I saw you. You're kind, strong, different from anyone I've ever met. I don't have much now, but one day I'll give you the best life. I want to marry you." Nneka's breath caught, her heart racing. For a moment she couldn't speak. His words were a lifeline, pulling her from the abyss she'd been sinking into. Finally she squeezed his hands. "Chukwudi, I love you too." His face broke into a smile, bright and unguarded. "You do?" "Yes," she said, then paused, her expression sobering. "But we need to slow down." His brow furrowed. "Slow down?" She took a steadying breath. "You're still struggling, still learning at the shop. Before we talk about marriage, you should at least finish your training, or better yet, own your own place." Chukwudi fell silent, then nodded. "You're right. I need to stand on my own first." She smiled, her faith in him unwavering. "And when you do, I'll be here." Hope flared in his eyes, but before he could reply, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and groaned. "My landlord," he muttered, answering the call. Nneka watched as his face shifted from calm to strained. When he hung up, he shook his head. "He says I have a few days to pay my rent, or he'll evict me." Nneka's heart sank. "Oh, Chukwudi, I wish I could help, but I have nothing." He touched her face gently, his smile soft. "I know, my love. Don't worry, I'll borrow from a friend." She clasped his hands, her voice fervent. "I pray things get better for you soon." "They will," he promised. "I won't give up." As Nneka returned home that night, her mind spun with worry. Chukwudi's words of love had lifted her, but his troubles weighed her down. She couldn't let him lose everything, not when she could help. Uncle Emeka was a man of means, his wealth tucked away in careless piles around the house. A few notes wouldn't be missed, she reasoned. The thought of stealing twisted her stomach, but desperation drowned her doubts. She waited until the house was still. Mama Ngozi and Adiz gossiping outside, Uncle Emeka off drinking, then crept into his room. There, on a table, lay a bundle of cash. Her hands shook as she took just enough for Chukwudi's rent, stuffing it into her dress before slipping out. The next morning she raced to the mechanic's shop, her pulse racing. Chukwudi was outside, wiping down a car. "Nneka, you came," he said, smiling. She pulled him aside, her eyes darting nervously. "I have something for you." She pressed the money into his hands. "It's for your rent. Take it before you're thrown out." His smile faded, replaced by shock. "Nneka, where did you get this?" She bit her lip, avoiding his gaze. I took it from my uncle." Chukwudi's face darkened. "You stole it?" She nodded, tears pricking her eyes. He pushed the money back toward her, his voice firm. "I can't take this." "Why?" she asked, hurt lacing her words. "Because it's not yours," he said. "Stealing is wrong, no matter the reason." "But I did it for you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't want you to suffer." "I know," he said softly, taking her hands. "But this isn't the way. If you get caught, what happens to you?" She looked away, knowing he was right. "Please, quickly return it before anyone notices," he urged. Nneka nodded, her resolve crumbling. "I won't do it again." "Good," he said, offering a small smile. "Now go before you're in trouble." She turned and left, her heart heavy with shame and relief. But as she stepped into the house, the air shifted. Uncle Emeka stood in the living room, his face a storm cloud, his belt dangling from his hand. Nneka's stomach dropped. She was too late. Nneka stood frozen in the doorway, her breath shallow as Uncle Emeka's shadow loomed over her. The house, usually alive with the clatter of Mama Ngozi's cooking or Adiz's chatter, was eerily silent. His eyes burned with a fury she'd seen before, but this time it was sharper, more dangerous. The belt in his hand swayed like a serpent ready to strike, and Nneka's legs trembled beneath her. She clutched the stolen money tighter in her dress, praying he hadn't noticed its absence yet. But the storm in his gaze told her otherwise. "Blessing, come here," he commanded, his voice a low rumble that shook the walls. She took a hesitant step forward, her mind racing for an excuse. "Uncle, I kept money on the table last night," he cut in, his tone icy. This morning it was gone. I asked my wife. I asked Adiz. Nobody took it. His eyes narrowed, pinning her like prey. Do you know anything about this? Nneka's throat tightened. I don't know, she stammered, but the lie crumbled under his scrutiny. Before she could finish, a slap cracked across her cheek, sharp and stinging. She staggered back, her hand flying to her face as tears welled up. Liar! Uncle Emeka roared. He lunged forward, seizing her arm and yanking her dress. The bundle of cash slipped free, tumbling to the floor like a confession. The room fell deathly still, the notes glaring up at them in silent accusation. Mama Ngozi, drawn by the commotion, gasped from the doorway, her hand clutching her chest. Adiz peeked in behind her, her eyes wide with shock, or perhaps delight. Uncle Emeka's hands shook as he picked up the money, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. So it's you. The orphan I took into my house. This is how you repay me. Nneka sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Uncle, I'm sorry. He didn't let her finish. The belt lashed out, striking her back with a force that stole her breath. She screamed, the pain searing through her, but he struck again, each blow punctuated by his rage. You're a disgrace, he shouted. I wish you'd died with your parents, my life would be better without you. Her heart shattered at his words, the weight of years of resentment crashing down. Mama Ngozi stood silent, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold indifference. Adiz smirked faintly, savoring her cousin's downfall. Uncle Emeka's assault paused, his chest heaving as he dropped the belt. He took a deep breath, his voice turning frigid. In 3 days I'll marry you off to Chief Okonkwo. Nneka's head snapped up, terror clawing at her chest. No, please, uncle, don't, she cried, crawling toward him. I promise I won't steal again. He kicked her away, his boot grazing her ribs. I don't care if you like him or not. You'll marry him. I won't waste my money feeding a thief. He turned to Mama Ngozi. Make sure she doesn't leave this house until the wedding. Mama Ngozi nodded, her lips a tight line. Uncle Emeka grabbed Nneka by the arm and dragged her to her room, shoving her inside. The door slammed shut, the lock clicking with finality. She rushed to it, pounding with her fists. Please, uncle, let me out. Don't do this. Her pleas echoed unanswered, swallowed by the walls. She sank to the floor, her body aching, her spirit broken. In 3 days she'd be bound to a monster and no one would save her. Meanwhile, across town, Chukwudi felt a gnawing unease. 2 days had passed since he'd last seen Nneka, and her absence gnawed at him. She hadn't come to the eatery, hadn't slipped by the shop. At first he thought Mama Ngozi had tightened her grip, but by the second day, dread settled in his gut. He couldn't focus, his wrench slipped, his hands fumbled. He had to know she was safe. Leaving the shop early, he made his way to her house, his heart pounding with every step. The compound was quiet when he arrived, too quiet. Mama Ngozi and Adiz were nowhere in sight, and Uncle Emeka's usual spot by the door was empty. Chukwudi crept to the side of the house, where Nneka's small window faced the alley. As he neared, he heard it, soft, broken sobs. His chest tightened. He tapped the window gently. Nneka, he whispered. The crying stopped. The window creaked open, revealing her tear-streaked face. Her eyes were swollen, her lips cracked, her spirit visibly crushed. Chukwudi, she gasped, her voice a fragile thread. Nneka, what happened? He asked, gripping the bars. She wiped her face with trembling hands. They locked me in here. Her breath hitched as she forced out the words. They're forcing me to marry Chief Okonkwo. The wedding's tomorrow. Chukwudi's world tilted. Tomorrow? Rage surged through him, but he forced it down, keeping his voice steady. What? What did they do to you? She took a shuddering breath. I took money from Uncle to help you with your rent. He caught me. He beat me, locked me up. He says I'm a thief, that I don't deserve to live here. Guilt stabbed at Chukwudi, sharp and unrelenting. This is my fault, he muttered, his fists clenching. I should have taken it. No, she said quickly. I chose to help you. But now, her voice broke. I'm scared, Chukwudi. Chief Okonkwo is wicked. I can't marry him. He leaned closer, his eyes fierce with resolve. You won't. I won't let it happen. Her lips trembled. But how? You don't have money, power, what can you do? I don't know yet, he admitted, his jaw tight. But I promise by tomorrow you'll be free. She searched his face, desperate for hope. I trust you, she whispered, clutching his hands through the bars. Stay strong, he said. I'll come back for you. With a final squeeze he slipped away, his mind racing as he walked back to his room. This had gone too far. Nneka's life hung in the balance, her family's cruelty and noose around her neck. He'd hidden his true self for months, playing the poor mechanic to find love, but now that love was in danger. Enough is enough, he muttered, his fists tightening. I have to come clean. The next morning, a sleek, black car rolled into the dusty street outside Nneka's house, its engine a low purr that turned heads. Chukwudi stepped out transformed. Gone were the greasy overalls. In their place was a tailored suit, crisp and commanding, paired with polished shoes and a gold watch that caught the sun. He stood tall, his presence radiating authority. Uncle Emeka, sipping tea on the porch, froze, his cup halfway to his lips. Mama Ngozi and Adiz emerged, their mouths dropping open. Adiz nudged her mother, whispering, "Mama, look." Chukwudi approached Uncle Emeka, his steps deliberate. "I'm here to marry Nneka," he said, his voice clear and unshaken. Uncle Emeka scoffed, recovering his bravado. "You must be mad. Nneka's marrying Chief Okonkwo today. You can't stop it." "I love her," Chukwudi replied, unflinching. "And I'm not here to beg, I'm here to tell you she's mine." Laughter erupted from Uncle Emeka, Mama Ngozi, and Adiz, their mockery ringing through the compound. "Chukwudi, I know you," Uncle Emeka sneered. "My wife and daughter have told me everything, how poor you are, how you can't even afford meat. You borrowed this car, this suit to impress me, eh? You're just a mechanic." Chukwudi's expression remained stone cold. "Try me and see," he said. "I told you I love Nneka and I'll marry her. Do you even know who I am?" Uncle Emeka laughed harder, clapping his hands. "You're a foolish boy. You think you can trick me?" He turned to Mama Ngozi. "Call the police. Let them take this clown away." Mama Ngozi hurried inside, dialing frantically. Minutes later, a police van screeched to a halt, sirens blaring. 4 officers stepped out, their boots crunching the dirt. Uncle Emeka smirked, pointing at Chukwudi. "Arrest this man. He's a liar and a fraud, causing trouble in my house." But the officers froze when they saw Chukwudi. Their eyes widened and they snapped to attention, saluting sharply. "Good morning, sir," they chorused. Uncle Emeka's smirk vanished. "What's this? Why are you greeting him?" One officer stepped forward, confused. "Sir, why are we here? Who's to be arrested?" "Him." Uncle Emeka snapped, jabbing a finger at Chukwudi. "Arrest him." The officer hesitated, then turned to Chukwudi respectfully. "Sir, is this true?" Chukwudi smiled faintly. "Yes, they called you to arrest me." The officer shook his head. "No, sir, that can't happen. You're the son of our boss. We can't arrest you, you've done nothing wrong." Uncle Emeka's knees buckled, his face draining of color. "What?" he stammered. Mama Ngozi and Adiz gasped, clutching each other. Chukwudi stepped closer, his gaze piercing Uncle Emeka's soul. "I told you, you don't know who I am." The officers nodded. "Sir, if this man's disturbing you, we can take him instead," one offered. Chukwudi smirked. "No need. He's learned his lesson." The police saluted, piled into their van and drove off. Uncle Emeka collapsed to his knees, sweat beading on his forehead. "My son, forgive me," he cried, grabbing Chukwudi's leg. "I didn't know. I'm sorry for everything." Mama Ngozi knelt beside him, trembling. "Chukwudi, please, we didn't know you were a rich man." Adiz stood speechless, her arrogance shattered. Uncle Emeka wiped his face, his voice quaking. "I'll cancel everything with Chief Okonkwo. Please forgive me. You can come with your people any time to marry Nneka." Chukwudi slipped his hands into his pockets, his smile cool. "Okay, no problem." Nneka, watching from her window, ran out, tears streaming as she threw herself into his arms. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, holding her close. "I told you I'd come for you. I love you, Nneka." "I love you too," she said, smiling through her tears. "I'll come in 2 days with my people," he said, cupping her face. "Be ready." She nodded, her heart soaring. He kissed her hands, climbed into his car and drove off. As Nneka watched him go, she felt the chains of her past fall away. Freedom was hers, and soon so would he be.